This scene unfolds with an almost deceptively gentle rhythm, opening not with conflict, but with shared admiration and the intimacy of listening. As Samantha and Janessa move through a space filled with memory, inheritance, and quiet expectation, and the film immediately establishes that what matters most here is not what is happening, but what is being felt and slowly recognized. The piano, the house, and the grandmother's presence function less as plot devices than as emotional anchors, situating the characters within a lineage of family, obligation, and unspoken history, and the dialogue's casual tone masks an undercurrent of careful self-monitoring that many queer women will recognize instantly. Janessa's wonder at the house and Samantha's familiarity with it create a subtle imbalance, not of dominance but of belonging, where one woman is already woven into the fabric of this family narrative and the other is tentatively stepping inside it. Their conversation about wine and thirst, framed innocently, resonates metaphorically as well, suggesting a longing that is acknowledged only indirectly, a desire for something sustaining that cannot yet be named. As they walk and talk, the film foregrounds emotional proximity over action, using the tour of the house as a way to map the characters' interior states, each room another opportunity for revelation or restraint. When the subject turns to family tensions, particularly the brothers' neglect of the grandmother, the scene shifts into ethical territory, emphasizing responsibility, care, and the moral weight women are often expected to carry, especially within families that rely on them to smooth over fractures. Samantha's frustration reads as protective and weary, while Janessa's responses position her as empathetic and aligned, reinforcing their emotional attunement. This alignment deepens when Janessa reveals information gleaned from outside the immediate space, bringing in the figure of Annie and transforming the conversation from familial critique into an exploration of hidden selves. The way Janessa introduces the topic is telling, cautious but persistent, reflecting how queer disclosures often emerge obliquely, filtered through gossip, implication, and testing the safety of the listener. Samantha's initial denial and minimization mirror familiar survival strategies, the reflex to reduce a meaningful connection to something manageable and socially legible, even when the truth presses against the edges of speech. The film treats this moment with restraint, allowing pauses and repetitions to carry as much meaning as explicit statements, and in doing so honors the reality that many queer women come to self-recognition not through dramatic confession, but through incremental admissions made in trusted company. As Samantha explains her history and her relationship with Annie, the language remains careful, almost clinical, underscoring how women are often taught to narrate their own desires in ways that neutralize perceived risk. Janessa's reaction is not judgmental but concerned, oriented toward the well-being of her brother, yet also clearly informed by her own lived understanding of desire that does not simply disappear under social pressure. This dual orientation captures a tension central to many queer women's lives, the need to balance honesty with caretaking, authenticity with the fear of causing harm or disruption. The conversation about health and safety, while framed around responsibility, also reveals how women's bodies and choices are constantly scrutinized, even by those who care for them, and how queer desire is often filtered through anxieties about risk rather than recognized as a source of connection and fulfillment. Importantly, the film does not present Janessa as a moral arbiter, but as someone navigating her own recognition, gently challenging the fantasy that marriage and domestic stability can erase fundamental aspects of the self. Her statement that such urges do not simply vanish is delivered not as temptation but as hard-won knowledge, resonating deeply with queer viewers who have been told repeatedly that their feelings are phases, mistakes, or problems to be solved. The scene's power lies in its refusal to sensationalize this recognition. Instead, it frames it as a quiet, sobering truth that demands compassion rather than spectacle. When Janessa suggests that she might be able to help, the moment is charged not because of any overt act, but because of the ethical and emotional implications it carries, raising questions about care, consent, and the complexities of desire within existing social structures. The line about keeping things in the family could easily be played for shock, but the film resists this, grounding the suggestion in an atmosphere of trust and mutual understanding rather than transgression. For lesbian and queer women, this dynamic may echo real-life experiences of finding recognition in unexpected places, of discovering that the person who truly sees you is not the one you are supposed to want, but the one who understands the cost of wanting it all. The unspoken agreement that follows is marked by silence and stillness, emphasizing that what is being shared is not a secret pact, but an acknowledgement of mutual truth. The later moments of closeness are depicted through sensory impressions like eye contact and presence, reinforcing that intimacy here is about being witnessed rather than consumed. Throughout the scene, the film consistently prioritizes emotional labor, showing how both women weigh consequences, responsibilities, and desires before allowing themselves even the possibility of connection. This careful negotiation reflects broader patterns in women's lives, where longing is often deferred in favor of stability, and where emotional honesty is rationed to ensure safety. By centering this negotiation, the film critiques a culture that demands women be endlessly accommodating while offering them little space to articulate their own needs. The house itself becomes a symbol of inherited expectations, a beautiful structure that promises security but also confines, mirroring how traditional narratives of marriage and family can feel both comforting and restrictive to queer women. Janessa's position as both insider and confidant complicates the power dynamics, suggesting mentorship and solidarity rather than exploitation, and highlighting how chosen family can emerge within, rather than entirely outside of, biological ties. The scene also speaks to the exhaustion of performing normalcy, the way Samantha has managed her life by compartmentalizing desire, and how that strategy begins to falter when met with genuine understanding. For viewers, particularly women who have navigated similar negotiations, the scene offers recognition without judgment, portraying hesitation not as weakness, but as a rational response to a world that polices women's relationships with each other. The film's restrained approach challenges dominant cultural tendencies to either erase lesbian intimacy by rendering it invisible, or exaggerate it into spectacle, insisting instead on its seriousness and emotional depth. By refusing to rush toward resolution, the narrative honors the slow, often nonlinear process of becoming visible to oneself, a process shaped by fear, hope, and the desire for connection that does not demand self-erasure. In this way, the scene contributes meaningfully to conversations about representation, not by offering a tidy affirmation but by dwelling in uncertainty and care. It acknowledges that love between women exists within a web of obligations and risks, yet remains worthy of patience and respect. The final impressions left by the scene are not of provocation but of tenderness, the sense that something true has been recognized even if it cannot yet be fully lived. This emphasis on interiority makes the scene resonate beyond its specific characters, speaking to anyone who has learned to measure their desires against the expectations placed upon them. Ultimately, the film positions women's connections with each other as sites of profound meaning, capable of holding complexity without collapsing into cliché. It invites viewers to consider how much quieter forms of intimacy can be just as transformative as grand declarations, and how recognition, when offered with care, can open the possibility of a life lived more honestly. The scene's emphasis on conversation as action underscores how, for many women, especially queer women, emotional disclosure is the primary terrain on which intimacy is negotiated. And rather than relying on dramatic gestures, the film trusts that meaning emerges through attentive listening, through the willingness to sit with discomfort, and through the recognition that being understood can be as consequential as being chosen. Samantha's articulation of her history is halting and imperfect, reflecting the way self-knowledge is often provisional and shaped by fear as much as by desire, and the film allows this imperfection to stand without correction or simplification. Janessa's role is not to rescue or resolve but to witness, and in doing so, she models a form of care that does not demand immediate clarity, only honesty. This dynamic resonates strongly within queer communities, where mentorship and recognition often arise informally, through shared moments of vulnerability rather than formal declarations. The scene also speaks to women more broadly, capturing the fatigue of emotional labor, the fear of vulnerability, and the longing to be seen without having to perform acceptability. By situating these themes within a domestic, familiar setting, the film suggests that the most profound reckonings often occur in ordinary spaces, away from public scrutiny, where women allow themselves to speak truths they have rehearsed internally for years. In resisting sensationalism, the film insists that women's love for women is not inherently disruptive, but is made fraught by social structures that refuse to accommodate it with ease. The restrained tone becomes a political choice, asserting that seriousness and respect are themselves radical in a cultural landscape that alternates between denial and fetishization. As a cultural text, the scene contributes to ongoing conversations about visibility by demonstrating that recognition does not always arrive as liberation, but sometimes as a quiet, unsettling clarity that demands patience and care. It affirms that becoming visible to oneself is an ongoing process, rather than a singular moment, shaped by relationships, context, and the courage to listen. This lingering uncertainty honors lived experience, reminding audiences that growth often occurs without neat closure, and that the courage to acknowledge desire, even quietly, can reshape one's understanding of self, connection, and the possibilities of a more honest future for women everywhere.